everyone, it's Mindy Eggen, and I'm excited to be back on the Gina K Designs YouTube channel sharing inspiration using the Christmas in July card kit. For my card project today, I do have a really fun technique that I'm going to do, and I'm sure there's different ways to say it, but I'm going to call this a gradient stamping with the help of my ink cubes and my blending brushes. I will be walking through the colors that I'm using for my technique today, but if you're interested in any of the products that I'm using, they will be linked down below in the video description. Two of the main things I'm going to use today is the Festive Blooms stamp and die set, and I'm also going to be using the Ornate Frame die. You're going to see that my stamp is stained, and that's because I used a few different shades of red inks, and red inks do typically stain your stamp. It doesn't hurt your stamp in any way, but don't be surprised if your stamps do stay red when you're done. Now, because I'm going to be stamping the same image multiple times, I decided to bring in one of the double background grip mats. I made sure to give it a nice cleaning because it's been a while since it's had a bath. So I just used my tidy towel, which is damp with water, and I just cleaned that off. Now, make sure your grip mat or your double background is dry before you place your cardstock over the top. To do my stamping, I am using a piece of Gina K Designs heavyweight white cardstock cut to 5.5 by 8.5, and then I'm placing my large Festive Bloom down onto the cardstock. I will be using my Misty to do my stamping, and the first thing I'm doing is starting with a light color. This is going to be the base for my gradient. I am using light cranberry. I'm making sure to press down in all of the areas, and I'm also going to kind of let it sit there for a few extra seconds to really let that light ink soak into the cardstock. Now, there is a lot of stamp here, so I'm not surprised I have to stamp it twice. And it looks like I did miss one little spot, so I'm applying additional pressure there. It still is not quite as covered as I want it to be, but I'm going to be stamping over it multiple times. So that's going to fix itself. Now we're going to get into the gradient portion, and I found that the ink cubes really work best for this. So this one is lipstick. You can see I am stamping it kind of in the center and going out towards the edge of the petals, but not all the way. And then I'm taking my blending brush and I'm kind of smushing my blending brush or the bristles into the edge of that ink to help smooth it out. I am not doing any circular motions because if you do that, you could leave actual brush marks when you stamp it down. So I just kind of tap it with the bristles of my blending brush. Now on screen, it doesn't look like much at first, and that's because the first layer is stamped twice. I'm also not giving it time to dry in between the layers, which you could do. I just went ahead and I'm stamping that lipstick again. So taking the bristles, kind of smushing them down to help feather out that color and have it gradually go into that light cranberry that I first stamped. Before I jump into my next color, I am going to clean off my blending brush. So I have a rag that I have spritzed with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and I'm taking some of that excess ink off because I really did pick up a lot of ink. Now I can come in, and this is going to be cherry red. I'm really trying to focus this darker color in towards the center. Once again, bring in that blending brush and tap all the way around to try and smooth out the edges and make it a softer transition. I want it to be a little bit more noticeable, so I'm going to stamp that one more time, again using that cherry red, kind of dab around the edges and stamp it. And I am very much a high contrast person. I really like to see the difference between the light and the dark. And I went through my inks and I had decided that dark cranberry might be a good match for this. So I'm coming in with that, and you're going to notice right away, especially when I close the door of the Misty, that this is definitely the center color for this, except I probably didn't dab off as much as I should have. There is kind of a harsh line there. So what I tried to do to fix that is I come back in with the blending brush, maybe even add a little bit more of that dark cranberry ink. I can also come back in with the cherry red to maybe try and smooth that out, or even stamping again with the lipstick. So there's a few different ways that you can try and smooth it out, or just give it time to dry. A lot of times these colors will dry back and kind of smooth out on their own. Now I'm lining up the center for my poinsettia, and this one I'm going to stamp in lemon drop. And it's kind of funny, I startled myself at first because I stamped it and I thought I stamped it wrong. I thought I lined it up wrong when really all it was is I didn't apply enough pressure on the one side. So now that I have complete stamped image there in the center, I'm going to stamp it again, and then I'm going to bring in honey mustard in my small ink cube and just kind of tilt it and go around the edges for that centerpiece. And again, that's just adding some interest to the image. So my poinsettia is done. I'm going to use that same technique for the leaves, and I'm just doing one leaf at a time. The first layer, I'm using key lime. This has kind of been my go-to green combination for ink blending or even this gradient stamping. So I did that first layer in the key lime. Then I'm coming in with Kelly green, and I'm coming in from just one side of that holly leaf, going maybe about halfway up. And then again, with the blending brush and the bristles, just kind of tapping that off. And then the last part, the darkest shade, is going to be Christmas pine. These leaves made me so happy because it was just an absolutely perfect transition. No harsh lines at all, just blended together beautifully as if I had used a stencil. I'm going to use that exact same technique for my other leaf. And to clean my stamps, the poinsettia and the leaves, I just use the tidy towel. And if it's a really stubborn color, I will even bring in a little bit of stamp cleaner. Now, since I had my stamping positioner out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp one of the sentiments using obsidian ink. This set and also the sentiments all have a coordinating die. So I'm lining them all up, holding them down with a low tack tape, and then I'm going to run this through my intricate die cut machine. So for this, I just have the cutting mat and that top plate there. I have my intricate set at 0 and die cut, and it cut out perfectly. I do also like to cut another set of images out of just plain white cardstock, and that's really just to build stability behind my images so that nothing is curling over from either the weight of the paper or the weight of the ink. I'm going to be die cutting out the ornate frame, and I will be die cutting this out of the red hot cardstock, which is an absolutely perfect Christmas red. So this I'm holding down once again with a low tack tape, and I'm going to bring my intricate on screen here for you because I did have to experiment with this on the settings to get this to die cut really well. So I'm placing this on my gray cutting mat. I'm going to kind of tilt it so that the edge of that die is not going like full on when you run it through. And then my die cut machine, I have it set to die cut, and then I'm going to tighten it. So I think I have it set there to tighten on 2. I don't remember if it's positive or negative, but it's tight and 2. Now I am flipping my plates so that essentially my blade is facing up. That's always been a trick that I learned from Gina a long time ago, regardless of what die cut your machine you're using, is that for whatever reason, when the die is facing up in your cutting plate, it cuts out fantastic. And because with the intricate machine that we can dial in that tightness, I didn't have to add any extra shims. So after die cutting, I like to just drop my frame onto my glass work surface to help clean out any of the extra bits. And then I take my pokey tool and I just pop out any of the bits that are left in the cardstock. So I did die cut out a second one from that same red hot cardstock. I want to layer this together for a little dimension. I'm adding Connect glue all the way around the outer edge and the inside edge, and then just kind of on the bigger areas inside of the frame. And then I'll layer one over the top of the other. So this is definitely not a card you're probably going to want to mass produce. This is one of those Christmas cards that you're going to want to send to somebody special that's really going to appreciate your card. Remember all of those extra die cut pieces that I had die cut before? Here, I'm going ahead and just adhering all of those together. So it's an extra piece for the flower and also the leaves. You can use liquid glue or you can use tape runner, whatever works best for you. I also did an extra one for my sentiment. You can stack your sentiment a few more times if you want a little more dimension, but I will be mixing it with a few foam squares. The ornate frame I flipped over to the back and once again adding that connect glue that I have in a fine tip bottle, adding that all the way around the outer edge, the inside edge, and then some of the larger areas there on the frame, and then placing that on a piece of heavyweight white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now I did kind of smudge a little bit at the bottom there. I kind of got a little too excited and placed it down before I really had it lined up. So you probably can't see it on screen, but there was a little bit of a mark left over from the glue. So I turned my cardstock and I figured that's where my flower is going to go because then the flower is going to pretty much hide any of those imperfections. So I have my poinsettia kind of placed out where I want it to go, and I'm adding the leaves behind them, just tucking them in where I think it would frame nicely using my tape runner to adhere it, because then that way I can always reposition them. And then I'm going to add the Gina K Designs foam squares behind the area of the petals that are kind of on the inside of that frame. So it'll help kind of even it out where I don't have any saggy areas. Here, I decided I wanted my leaf to come out in a little bit different area. So again, that's another reason why I like to use the tape runner is that gives me a little bit more wiggle room. I'm removing the backing from my foam squares. I'm going to add liquid glue on the rest of the area because I didn't know exactly what was going to hit the frame and what wasn't. So, liquid glue to the rescue. Place that down so it's up in that top left hand corner. I know some of the petals are overhanging the edge, which you can either trim off later on or you can just put into a bigger envelope. Then adding in my sentiment down towards the bottom, I decided to go with some, I think it's like stardust or unicorn stickles for some glittery centers. And then I decided to do something a little bit extra. Now, the white lines left from the poinsettia when I did the stamping is great. It's perfect. But I have these gold chrome pens that I picked up off of Amazon. They're in my drawer. And I decided to actually go over the top of all of those white lines in the flower petals. Sorry, they're leaves, not petals. I keep saying petals, force a habit. They are leaves. So I'm tracing over all of those lines with that gold chrome marker. Now, if you are sensitive to smells, I do not recommend that gold chrome marker. It does have a bit of a smell to it. A few hours after this was dry, I didn't really notice much of a smell. Maybe if it's put into an envelope and sent off, it might have a smell. But I didn't notice it much afterwards, just more of when I was using it. So be aware if you do have any kind of markers like that. It was just something I had sitting in my drawer that I wanted to try out. I thought I would try it out on this. So I did do it to the leaves and also the green leaves. And it was pretty. It's really pretty, but it does also look really good just leaving it with the white lines from when I did the original stamping. All right, friends, that finishes off my card project for today. I really love this large poinsettia bloom and also paired with the ornate frame. But look through, maybe you have some of Gina's other frame dies because I did play around with some other ones that would look great with this as well. And I hope you give gradient stamping a try if you haven't yet. Thank you all so much for watching today, and thank you to Gina for having me on her YouTube channel. Again, everything used will be linked down below in the video description. Happy crafting, everyone!